and welcome to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, Executive Director of the Community Career Center, a resource center located in Naperville for people in career transition. If you are unemployed, underemployed, or seeking a career change, this show is for you. Career Center will bring human resource professionals and other experts together to provide job search tips to assist you as you search for your next success. On this month's edition of Career Center, we will explore career transition and entrepreneurship. Later on Career Center, I will be joined by Matt Quigley and Greg Syme from DEZINER Software to talk about entrepreneurship and millennials. But first, it is my pleasure to have President and CEO of DEZINER Software, Mark Quigley. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. Glad to be here.
So Mark, DEZINER Software, tell me a little bit about what you do, and I'm really curious to know the spelling for DEZINER Software.
Sure, it's D-E-Z-I-N-E-R. We kind of went a little trick on the name search, and so we just thought it'd be kind of neat to name DEZINER Software.
Okay.
Although a lot of people do get the spelling messed up quite a bit.
I bet. So tell me a little bit about what you do.
Sure. We put together a cloud-based platform that helps folks go through and put a business plan and financial modeling platform together. And that sounds very high-tech and everything, but a lot of people that want to get into entrepreneurship have a great idea, but we want them to kind of put their own due diligence together to write up their business plan, do the research, and then run some numbers to see if what they're going to go into really makes sense.
So how do they go about doing that with your software guides them?
Right. We have, when they get into the software and they log into it, they can kind of go through kind of an a la carte menu and kind of build the sections they want to focus in on. And then we have a knowledge base, customer service support to it, so they're never really left behind in there. And I think one of the neatest features that we've added is a mentors tab, so they can reach out to the community either through your SBDC office or a SCORE.
SBDC, Small Business.
Small Business Development Centers, right? There's over 900 of them across the country. The SCORE, there's about 11,000 mentor volunteers that want to help and really give back to the business world, and they do that through their volunteer.
So do you all help them create their business plan, or do they kind of come to you, the software really guides them through that? Yeah,
the software guides them through it. There's a blue box in each section, kind of gives us very explicit direction what we want them to fill out. And they start out with what we'd like them to do, what's called Business Plan Canvas, which is essentially a one-page executive summary of what your business is going to be. And from there, once you've got that sorted out, you can start going down the layers of the onions, adding more and more detail to really shape up what your business is going to be.
So what did you do before you started DEZINER Software?
I had a small investment banking firm, and I had also worked at a small, what they call a boutique investment banking firm.
Okay.
So my background was writing business plans and putting financial models together to go raise debt and equity for companies.
Okay. So was entrepreneurship something you always thought about then?
Yeah, I had started out working for a Jack Gokin, who was the one who founded MCI, and I was the number 13 employee in one of his air-ground telephone systems. And so I got to be VP of marketing and got exposed to some pretty big-time entrepreneurship.
So at the Career Center, we have job seekers who have, given some consideration to entrepreneurship. As they, continue to look for a job, some may think, this may be the time. Let's talk about some things people need to think about before they just decide to do it.
Absolutely.
For instance, like you have to be passionate about something. Were you passionate about software, or?
I've learned a lot about software since I've joined the software company. Passion is absolutely a part of the play, as is persistence, and the ability to learn a lot about things you don't probably know today. It's like you're being back in grad school. I mean, you're learning something every day about your business, particularly as a business owner. So it's something that if they want to look at that, once you convince yourself you think you want to go into that realm, you want to do the research before you jump out, because most small businesses, the expense goes from about $30,000 to $100,000, and you want to really be sure of when you take that plunge, you're really armed with the knowledge of actually going out and actually starting and running that operation.
And early on, you need to also think about risk, right?
Quite. It's hard to make good judgment, good decisions when you're at high risk, and so preferably if you're thinking about doing entrepreneurship, you're in a stable position where you are, and you've got the time to do the proper amount of due diligence, because the research, again, is king. It's without it, I think you have a very high chance of failure. So whether it's a 1 month or 6 months of research, interviewing prospective vendors you're going to be working with, or interviewing prospective clients, or whatever product or service, so you really know how to shape and deliver to the public or the government your product or service.
I just want to go back to the passionate piece. So if someone's, they may be passionate about 1 or 2 or 3 things. How do you narrow that down? Do you look at, maybe what's, least in terms of a risk factor and in terms of making money? I mean, how do you narrow that down? Is that where that mentorship comes in?
The mentorship comes in, right, because those are folks that have been out there and they're bringing their sage advice to help build it out. But I would say one of the biggest insurance patterns you can do is, unless you're doing a sole proprietorship, you want to bring a management team together, because what skill sets that you don't have, you've got members on your team bringing to the party, and so all that energy can be dispersed and set common goals out there that everybody achieves. So the management team you pull together is as key as the actual business idea.
And your management team, what does that look like? You have an accountant? I mean, what do you mean?
Yeah, those are the outside suppliers. I'm talking about a management team that would be something that actually works inside with you on your company.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, so that might be your VP of sales, or it could be a marketing or an engineering person. You got an idea, but you got to have other people help build that team with you and build the company with you.
What are some other questions that people should ask themselves before they decide to delve into entrepreneurship?
Really know what competition you're going to be facing and how you're going to put that eye of the needle, thread that needle of how you're going to take, once you launch your company, how you're going to take it to market. And because there's almost in every case out there, there's competitors, large or small, that you're going to have to deal with. So how are you going to fit your company's ideas, products, services, get it out there in the market and actually make it profitable to sustain your family and the members of your management team.
And when you talk about competitors, how do you find the competitors in the area? I mean, I know there's Google and all that, but and what did you all do when you decided this is what?
Right, we actually went to the library, and the library's got,
great. Yeah,
the library's got dozens of database research systems you can access to research market spend, market size, where they're selling, where they're located, what their rates are, and so you can come back and kind of make a competitive plan, because you're going out there against a big battle sometimes. I mean, it's as they say, business is love and war, right? All's fair in love and war. So you have to be very certain how you're going to do it. So planning all your costs, what it's going to take to develop the timelines, so you don't get so exuberant about it, you kind of misstep on your launch. That's probably the biggest concern I have for most people.
Right.
The studies are that in 2 years, most companies fail, but it's not because they're not actually making sales, but there's a cash flow deficit, and they actually burn out by the time the years 2 comes up, and they fail. But they had a good idea. They were making money.
Right. Interesting. I would imagine one of the skill sets, like a strong skill set that you would need is to have someone needs to be a really good decision maker. Would you say?
Yes, because at the end of the day, who's responsible for everybody? But most of the time, in today's modern environment, that what's called power distance is you're working with a team. It's not always an autocratic decision. You do have to have somebody that said the buck stops here type of environment. And in today's workforce, it generally becomes a consensus building concept.
And then another thing with entrepreneurship, I would also imagine you have to be willing to take on all different roles, at least early on, right?
Right. We kind of make a joke. We're just glad there's only 7 days in the week to work, because the amount of projects that come up, and they're not diversions, they're all things that have to get done, but you run out of assignments. And so you have to be very willing to put in, it's not an 8-hour type day job. It's typically not a 5-day week job. It's a very much over-the-top commitment to make your company work.
And how did you, or have you, I mean, I would also imagine there's a burnout factor. Again, you mentioned that just a little bit ago in terms of if you're not making the money needed. So what happens in that regard?
I think that's different for everybody. I think you have to have a passion for whatever you get into, and I think that passion has to sustain you, because in any entrepreneurial deal, there's going to be good times and bad times. But as you see successes, you have to really cherish those successes, which keeps you going. The biggest thing is making sure of your cash flow statement. Where's the money coming in? How am I going to pay the bills for the company? So you have to put together a very good plan. Are you self-funding? Are your management team kicking in money? Are you taking on debt, or are you bringing in outside dollars? You have to have that pretty well sorted out. And raising money for most people is the most important, difficult challenge they will ever face. Banks today don't normally give out loans to startup companies. You have to have typically 2 years of operations before they'll even talk to you. You can't even fill out a loan application. So you have to really map that out, and that's why we designed Intercept, which is our flagship product.
Intercept. Great segue. Let's talk about Intercept.
Sure. It's our cloud-based platform. It runs in 11 different languages now. The latest one we just added was Russian. But it does, again, all the qualitative and quantitative numbers that you need, and you don't have to be an accountant or finance person to actually operate it. We just ask you some inputs as you research the numbers and put the numbers in. It actually builds all the financial statements for you. And the qualitative side of it is, again, it comes down to what is your vision of your company and where am I taking it to? If you require outside investors or partners to help fund it, you're going to have to be able to very well describe what your company's about and how they're going to make money with you.
Very good. Okay. What future do you see for entrepreneurs? Do you see more and more people going that route because of the job market? And
right. I think when you hear the statistics of people graduating colleges and sort of getting to know their mom and dad's basement again, or folks who are out there and they've been let go from some of the companies out there, it becomes almost a crystallizing moment of where can I take an idea? Because most people have some really great ideas out there. It's a question of how are they actually going to execute that idea. So I think everybody should be thinking about an entrepreneurial, based on your life, what life you lead, what you want to lead. It's when do you pull the trigger and actually go try something like that. Because it can be a very exuberating experience, but it's also very trying. And not everybody hits the success plateau. You might find out that entrepreneurship is not for you, and but you have to check it out. You have to do your research, particularly for yourself.
Right. And before we wrap up, do you got anything on what's out there for your next big product development?
We are working on a nonprofit module because a lot of the companies out there, a lot of the individuals we talk to after every conference, after every speaking engagement, somebody comes up and taps us on the shoulder and says, we would like a nonprofit module, and that's what we're coming out with next.
Well, we'll be your guinea pig there, so.
Very good.
All right. Mark, thank you so much. I know time goes fast when we're talking. I want to thank you for coming on the show and talking about entrepreneurship and job searching. Don't go away, because when we come back, I will be joined by Matt Quigley and Greg Syme from DEZINER Software to talk about and explore the pros and cons of millennials and entrepreneurship. We'll be right back after these public service announcements.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, and joining me at the table is Chief Operating Officer of DEZINER Software, Matt Quigley, and Chief Technology Officer of DEZINER Software, Greg Syme, to talk about entrepreneurship and millennials. Greg, Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
So before we, go more and talk about millennials and entrepreneurship, tell me a little bit about who you are, what brought you to DEZINER Software, And how about we start with you, Matt?
Sure. So I recently came from the United States Navy. I was a naval officer for 6 years before joining DEZINER. And I actually was part of the founding of the company. Basically what happened was we were sitting off the coast of Iran at 2 in the morning, and we were talking about like, what are you going to do when you get out of the Navy? And I was like, well, I'm going to start a business, of course. And wasn't DEZINER software at all. I was going to start a gaming bar in San Diego.
Oh.
And I started doing some rudimentary research about doing that and realized I was ill-equipped to actually go forth and start a business with my background. So I had contacted my father, Mark, who had been an investment banker, for help. And he asked me a few questions, and a few questions in I couldn't give the answers to. He said, Matt, I can't help you. And I'm thinking, great, my own father who does this for a living can't even help me start my business.
Right.
What does that say? So I went to the University of Chicago, got my MBA, and in doing that, realized that there was a real need for something in the marketplace that helps entrepreneurs like myself who needed a little bit more sophisticated level of financing to start my business, and worked with Mark, and in the process of doing that, realized we needed a software developer. And so I contacted Greg here, who was my roommate from the Naval Academy, and got going on that.
So Greg, you are the Chief Technology Officer.
Yes.
All right, and so were you sitting off the coast of somewhere else when you decided this?
No. Yeah, like Matt alluded to, so I was a computer science major at the Naval Academy, went out, did the naval officer thing, so I was on submarines for better part of the 5-year time, did some shore duty. So basically coming off the boat, went to the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, got assigned to work with their IT department there. So just building general IT experience. During that time, I'd been helping Matt and Mark develop the software, so the computer science background helped me actually implement what they were talking about. And so it was kind of a side project for the most part. And the time put in while I was still in the service got it to a point where I could step off after a short period after getting out of the Navy and come work full time.
Right. So Matt, it sounds like you were giving some thought to entrepreneurship when you talked about the gaming bar in San Diego, but you hadn't really thought about entrepreneurship.
I would say I kind of came around to it as the conclusion on how work fit with my personality. So after the Navy, I worked for the government at the Naval Postgraduate School as a GS employee, government service, and just came to the realization that it wasn't for me. So very much the traditional 40-hour work week, punch in, punch out, do exactly what your job says you're going to do, and that wasn't doing it for me.
I would say that's something that's definitely, different with millennials, if you don't mind me saying that. That traditional work week doesn't necessarily work, right?
Not at all, especially with someone with a slight entrepreneurial mindset even. I think about the way our company works, and we work at all hours of the day. There are days where we're up till 2 in the morning because the idea strikes us, and that's when we feel best at working. But the idea of working, anywhere with a traditional 9 to 5, check in, check out type of a solution doesn't really necessarily vibe with the personality that we have.
And you'd say the same?
Largely, and there's some things about it that just don't work, and so I wouldn't necessarily say it's the generation for everything, and some of it's just the reality of becoming information workers as a country. So I don't need to be in any specific location or at any specific time to do my work. I'm writing code. It's me and my computer and the internet, and not me and an assembly line to produce our finished product, which is software.
Right. So when you were at the Naval Academy, you both graduated from there, right? No, you said. Were there others in your group of friends that talked about entrepreneurship?
Not at the time. I think there was a lot of interest in seeing what opportunities are out there. That being said, as we've gotten 5, 6, 7 or more years out. More years out. Actually, about a third of our company, which is a group of about 30 people that I know have gone into the tech and entrepreneurship space. So it actually was a very prevalent theme that kind of developed over time.
Would you say for millennials who are about to graduate from college, what are some things they should think about? I know I talked with Mark earlier about different things people should think about when they're going into entrepreneurship. What about millennials? Is it different for them? Different things for them to think about?
I would say that the thing they need to think about when getting ready to make that transition is just to constantly look around you and evaluate, does your personality fit with the career that you're going to go into? Mm-hmm. And that being said, at any point, do you see some way that you can improve or find a way to make better an issue within whatever field of interest you have? Because you might be very interested in, let's say, like biology or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you can go work for a traditional laboratory and you can, collect your paycheck. Mm-hmm. But that being said, at the same time, if you can find your niche and say, hey, here's this specific thing, I can improve this, go forth and make it happen.
Do it. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
All I can really add is, one, particularly in computer science, I felt that the undergraduate program doesn't necessarily prepare you for the workplace. So it's not about being able to, in our case, solve really specific small problems. And you do learn a little bit of the kind of meta learning of how to approach and handle problems, but you're going to get into something, you're getting into a specific thing and you're going to work on that. So you need to be figuring that out. And computer science, the internships, the work co-ops, that kind of thing is very common in how you actually learn how to do the job and become a productive member of the workforce. And the other thing I would say is ownership is big in entrepreneurship. And it's also one of the things that I found to be lacking in the more traditional workplaces. So if you...
I like that, ownership.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's one of the things that we got out of the military. You can't avoid it there where it's your name on the dotted line. Right. But if you feel the need to own and really take accountability, responsibility, and also the accolades that come with doing a job well, then maybe entrepreneurship is better for you than...
Okay, so for a person about to graduate, they're thinking, this is what I want to do, have my own business. You mentioned you talked to Mark about his background in investment. What if someone doesn't have someone like Mark? Capital, funding, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so first I'd say use Intercept, which is the program that we use.
We'll talk about Intercept,
And the reason I said is one of the things that we offer in there is a comprehensive list of angel investors and venture capital. Now granted, angel investing in venture capital is very on the high end of sophistication for finance. A lot of people, when they're starting a business, the average cost of starting a business is $30,000 in the United States. Now, again, that's way underneath the realm of angels. So they're going to need to look for friends and family and ways to convince those type of people. And something that actually just passed recently in Illinois, which is interesting, was a crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding act. So this will enable small startups to solicit to the local community so that people who are not credited investors can invest in that company and own a percentage of it. And that has never happened before. Before, you had to be a accredited investor, make over $250,000 a year, register with the SEC. Now that barrier has been removed, and so regular people can now invest in their local startup.
Is there a minimum amount they need to invest?
No, you can. Nope, it's you can invest all the way. Basically, the rules are if you make under $100,000 a year from whatever sources, salary, investments, etc., you can invest no more than $2,000.
Okay.
In any number of companies. So you could put $200 into 10 companies. But it, again, enables someone who's on the more on the middle class scale to invest their money.
Wow, and that's going to pass. They're starting in January, right?
Yeah, that actually passed this past summer, and it'll go into effect in January 1st in Illinois. And the SEC passed rules that should take into effect in the middle of the summer next year. Okay,
so we touched a little bit on Intercept. How did that get started? Let's spend some time talking about that. I know there's a story there.
There is. Again, the fact that I was going to start that gaming bar that I talked about a little bit at the beginning, when I did the research for it, I realized that I needed almost $250,000 to get my idea off the ground. It was a lot of money, and I don't know if you know anyone who just have friends and family that just has $250,000 laying around. I certainly didn't. No. So I quickly realized that I was going to need to go to a higher level investment, and so initially I thought, hey, I can go to a bank. And I very quickly learned that banks don't loan to startups, especially bars, unless you have established finances. Right. And again, so realizing the need for a more sophisticated level investor, I looked at what was on, like most millennials, I hopped online, I Googled for a solution, and I found there were business plan softwares out there, but none that got to the level of sophistication that I needed to attract the right kind of person to help my company grow.
And when did you kind of come into the mix there, Greg?
I started in 2012.
Okay.
So at the time I was still active and
Okay.
on the boat, but more recently I came on full time just in October.
So what would you say to or recommend to someone interested in starting up their own company, software company or something else?
2 words: go and see. If you think there's a problem out there, don't create a solution for that problem in isolation. You need to go out and explore your market. And if that means hopping in your car and going and literally seeing, what the issue is, go and make sure that you have a very comprehensive understanding of that before you spend any time and money and effort into creating a solution for that problem. That's where I would say start.
Yeah. What about you?
I would just say to have a product. So now, obviously, it's a step behind what Matt's saying, but if you're looking to get interest out of anyone, the strongest argument you can bring to the table is actually having what they're investing in.
Right. So this company started in 2008? No.
5 years ago from now.
5 years ago. Okay. And so how long did it take for you all to feel like, okay, this is going to be a successful company and we're going to be able to, make money and live and do all those things?
It took a few years, honestly. And that's one of the things I would say to future entrepreneurs is you're not going to jump in and immediately have success. Our product is a very complex product. We have to appeal to, very sophisticated investors. And so it took almost 3 years of product development and refinement, as well as then another year of focus group testing and making sure that the product fit with entrepreneurs. So we've only been selling our product for almost a year now, successfully, and making money on it. And it took a lot of upfront time exploring the market before we did that.
Biggest challenge that you guys have faced?
I'll let Greg take that one.
I'd say because of the complexity, it's finding the right, level to make an entrance at, because we're dealing with, on one hand, you have your entrepreneur who is really passionate about what they do, and maybe they have experience actually executing in that field, but they don't necessarily know any of the financial back end. So anything you do with numbers for them could be overwhelming. On the other side of the table, you have a bank or a venture capital analyst or someone else who lives in numbers, who their entire life is around running the math that makes these decisions. So you have to be accessible to the entrepreneur and at the same time powerful enough to provide value to the VCs and the bankers.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. And again, as we meet with our job seekers, and we know that there are many of them out there that are considering entrepreneurship. So thanks for coming in. Thanks for your service to the company. I'm not going to thank you all for Navy beating Army once again back in December, but it's amazing how fast time goes on this show, but thank you for coming in. I also want to thank Mark Quigley for joining me on this month's edition of Career Center. And for our television audience, remember, if you are unemployed, underemployed, or seeking a career change, search us on the web at www.communitycareercenter.org or visit us at 1815 West Diehl Road, Suite 900 in Naperville to learn more about the resources available to you. Thanks for watching.